Jubal was just leaving, as the man from Mars came in. "Father! Oh, Jubal!" Mike hugged and kissed him. Jubal gently unwound him. "Be your age, son. Sit down and enjoy your breakfast. I'll sit with you." "I didn't come here for breakfast. I came looking for you. We'll find a place and talk." "All right." They went to an unoccupied living room, Mike pulling Jubal by the hand like an excited small boy welcoming his favorite grandparent. Mike picked a big chair for Jubal and sprawled on a couch near him. They were on the side of the wing having the private landing flat, high French windows open to it. Jubal got up to shift his chair so that he would not be facing the light. He was mildly annoyed to find that the chair shifted itself. Remote control over objects was a labor saver, and probably a money saver, certainly on laundry. His spaghetti-splashed shirt had been so fresh that he had put it on again, and obviously to be preferred to the blind balkiness of mechanical gadgets. Nevertheless, Jubal was not used to telecontrol done without wires or waves. It startled him the way horseless carriages had disturbed decent, respectable horses about the time Jubal was born. Duke came in and served brandy. Mike said, "Thanks, Cannibal. Are you the new butler?" "Somebody has to do it, monster. You've got every brain in the place slaving away over a hot microphone." "Well, they'll be through in a couple of hours, and you can revert to your usual lecherous sloth." "The job is done, Cannibal. Pow. 30. Ended." "The whole damn Martian language in one lump? Monster, I'd better check you for burned-out capacitors." "Oh, no. Only the primer knowledge that I have. My brain's an empty sack. Eyebrows like Stinky will be going to Mars for a century to fill in what I never learned. But I did turn out a job. 6 weeks of subjective time since 5 this morning, or whenever it was we adjourned the sharing. And now the stalwart steady types can finish it while I loaf." Mike stretched and yawned. "Feels good. Finishing a job always feels good." "You'll be slaving away at something else before the day is out. Boss, this Martian monster can't take it or leave it alone. This is the first time he has relaxed in over 2 months. He ought to sign up with Workers Anonymous. Or you ought to visit us more often. You're a good influence." "God forbid that I should ever be." "Get out of here, Cannibal, and quit telling lies." "Lies, hell. You turn me into a compulsive truth-teller, and it's a handicap in the joints where I hang out." Duke left. Mike lifted his glass. "Share water, Father." "Drink deep, son." "Thou art God." "Mike, I'll put up with that from the others. But don't you come godding at me. I knew you when you were only an egg." "Okay, Jubal. That's better." "When did you start drinking in the morning? Do that at your age and you'll ruin your stomach. You'll never live to be a happy old soak like me." Mike looked at his glass. "I drink when it's a sharing. It doesn't have any effect on me, nor on most of us, unless we want it to. Once I let it have its effect until I passed out. It's an odd sensation. Not a goodness, I grok. Just a way to discorporate for a while without discorporating. I can get a similar effect, only much better and with no damage to repair afterwards, by withdrawing." "Economical." "Uh-huh. Our liquor bill isn't anything. Matter of fact, running that whole temple hasn't cost what it costs you to keep up our home. Except for initial investment and replacing some props. Coffee and cakes was all. We made our own fun. We needed so little that I used to wonder what to do with the money that came in." "Then why did you take collections?" "Huh? Oh, you have to charge them, Jubal. The marks won't pay attention if it's free." "I knew that. I wondered if you did." "Oh, yes, I grok marks, Jubal. At first I did preach free. Didn't work. We humans have to make considerable progress before we can accept a free gift and value it. I never let them have anything free until 6th circle. By then they can accept. And accepting is much harder than giving." "Son, maybe you should write a book on human psychology." "I have, but it's in Martian. Stinky has the tapes." Mike took a slow sybaritic sip. "We do use some liquor. A few of us, Saul, myself, Sven, some others, like it. I've learned to let it have just a little effect, then hold it, and gain a euphoric, growing closer, much like trance, without having to withdraw." He sipped again. "That's what I'm doing this morning, letting myself get the mildest glow and be happy with you." Jubal studied him closely. "Son, you've got something on your mind." "Yes." "Do you want to talk it out?" "Yes." "Father, it's always a great goodness to be with you, even if nothing is troubling me. but you are the only human I can talk to and know that you will grok and not be overwhelmed. Jill always groks. But if it hurts me, it hurts her still more. Dawn the same. Patty can always take my hurt away, but she does it by keeping it herself. They are too easily hurt for me to share in full with them anything I can't grok and cherish before I share it. Mike looked very thoughtful. Confession is needful. Catholics know that. They have a corps of strong men to take it. Fosterites have group confession and pass it around and thin it out. I need to introduce confession in the early purging. Oh, we have it, but spontaneously after the pilgrim no longer needs it. We need strong men for that. Sin is rarely concerned with a real wrongness, but sin is what the sinner groks as sin, and when you grok with him, it can hurt. I know. Mike went on earnestly. Goodness is not enough. Goodness is never enough. That was one of my first mistakes, because among Martians, goodness and wisdom are identical. But not with us. Take Jill. Her goodness was perfect when I met her. Nevertheless, she was all mixed up inside, and I almost destroyed her, and myself too, for I was just as mixed up before we got squared away. Her endless patience, not common on this planet, was all that saved us, while I was learning to be human, and she was learning what I knew. But goodness alone is never enough. A hard, cold wisdom is required for goodness to accomplish good. Goodness without wisdom always accomplishes evil. Mike added most soberly, and that's why I need you, Father, as well as loving you. I need your wisdom and your strength, for I must confess to you. Jubal squirmed. Oh, for Pete's sake, Mike, don't make a production out of it. Just tell me what's eating you. We'll find a way out. Yes, Father. But Mike did not go on. Finally, Jubal said, Do you feel busted up by the destruction of your temple? I wouldn't blame you. But you aren't broke. You can build again. Oh, no, that doesn't matter at all. Eh? That temple was a diary with its pages filled. Time for a new one rather than write over filled pages. Fire can't destroy the experiences. And from a standpoint of practical politics, being chased out in so spectacular a fashion will help in the long run. Churches thrive on martyrdom and persecution. It's their best advertising. In fact, Jubal, the last couple of days have been an enjoyable break in a busy routine. No harm done. His expression changed. Father, lately I learned that I was a spy. What do you mean, son? For the old ones. They sent me here to spy on our people. Jubal thought about it. Finally, he said, Mike, I know you are brilliant. You possess powers that I don't have and have never seen before. But a man can be a genius and still have delusions. I know. Let me explain, and you decide whether or not I'm crazy. You know how the surveillance satellites used by the security forces operate? No. I don't mean details that would interest Duke. I mean the general scheme. They orbit around the globe, picking up data and storing it. At a particular point, the sky eye is keyed, and it pours out all that it has seen. That is what they did with me. You know that we of the Nest use what is called telepathy. I've been forced to believe it. We do. But this conversation is private. And besides, no one would attempt to read you. I'm not sure we could. Even last night, the link was through Dawn's mind, not yours. Well, that is some comfort. I am only an egg in this art. The old ones are masters. They linked with me, but left me on my own, ignored me, then triggered me, and all I had seen and heard and done and felt and grokked poured out and into their records. I don't mean that they wiped my mind of it. They simply played the tape, so to speak, made a copy. But the triggering I could feel, and it was over before I could stop it. Then they cut off the linkage. I couldn't even protest. Well, it seems to me that they used you shabbily. Not by their standards. Nor would I have objected. I would have been happy to volunteer, had I known it before I left Mars, but they didn't want me to know. They wanted me to grok without interference. I was going to add, Jubal said, that if you are free of this damnable invasion of your privacy now, then what harm has been done? It seems to me that you could have had a Martian at your elbow all these past 2.5 years, with no harm other than attracting stares. Mike looked very sober. Jubal listened to his story. Listen all the way through. Mike told him of the destruction of the missing fifth planet of Sol, whose ruins are asteroids. Well, Jubal?
It reminds me of the myths about the flood.
No, Jubal. The flood you aren't sure about. Are you sure about the destruction of Pompeii and Herculaneum?
Oh, yes. Those are established facts.
Jubal, the destruction of the fifth planet by the Old Ones is as certain as that eruption of Vesuvius, and is recorded in much greater detail. No myth. Fact.
Stipulated. Do I understand that you fear that the Old Ones of Mars will give this planet the same treatment? Will you forgive me if I say that is hard for me to swallow?
Well, Jubal, it wouldn't take the Old Ones to do it. It merely takes knowledge of physics, how matter is put together, and the same control you have seen me use time and again, simply necessary first to grok what you want to manipulate. I can do it right now. Say a piece near the core of Earth, about 100 miles in diameter, much bigger than necessary, but we want to make this fast and painless, if only to please Jill. Feel out its size and place. Grok carefully how it is put together. His face lost all expression, and his eyeballs started to turn up.
Hey, broke in Harshaw, stop it. I don't know whether you can or not, but I don't want you to try.
The face of the man from Mars became normal. Why, I would never do it. For me, it would be a wrongness. I am human.
But not for them?
Oh, no. The Old Ones might grok it as beauty. I don't know. Oh, I have the discipline to do it, but not the volition. Jill could do it. That is, she could contemplate the exact method, but she could never will to do it. She is human, too. This is her planet. The essence of the discipline is, first, self-awareness, and then self-control. By the time a human is able to destroy this planet by this method, instead of by clumsy things like cobalt bombs, it is not possible, I grok fully, for him to entertain the volition. He would discorporate, and that would end any threat. Our Old Ones don't hang around the way they do on Mars.
Son, as long as we're checking you for bats in your belfry, clear up something else. You've always spoken of these Old Ones, as casually as I speak of the neighbor's dog, but I find ghosts hard to swallow. What does an Old One look like?
Why, just like any other Martian.
Then how do you know it's not just an adult Martian? Does he walk through walls or such?
Any Martian can do that. I did yesterday.
Shimmers? Or anything?
No. You see, hear, feel them. Everything. It's like an image in a stereo tank, only perfect, and put right into your mind. But, look, Jubal, the whole thing would be a silly question on Mars, but I realize it isn't here. If you were present at the discorporation, death of a friend, then helped eat his body, and then you saw his ghost, talked with it, touched it, anything, would you then believe in ghosts?
Well, either that or I'd slip my leash.
All right, here it could be hallucination. If I grok correctly that we don't hang around when we discorporate, but in the case of Mars, there is either an entire planet all run by mass hallucination, or the straightforward explanation is correct, the one I was taught, and all my experience led me to believe. Because on Mars, ghosts are the most powerful and most numerous part of the population. The ones still alive, the corporate ones, are hewers of wood and drawers of water, servants to the Old Ones. Jubal nodded.
Okay. I'll never boggle at slicing with Occam's razor. While it runs contrary to my experience, mine is limited to this planet, provincial. All right, son. You're scared they might destroy us?
Mike shook his head. Not especially. I think, this is not a grokking, but a guess, that they might do one of two things. Either destroy us, or attempt to conquer us culturally. Make us over into their own image.
But you're not fretted about us being blown up? That's a pretty detached viewpoint.
No. Oh, they might decide to. You see, by their standards, we are diseased and crippled. The things we do to each other, the way we fail to understand each other, our almost complete failure to grok with one another, our wars and diseases and famines and cruelties, these will be insanity to them. I know. So I think they will decide on a mercy killing, but that's a guess. I'm not an Old One. But Jubal, if they decide to, it will be... Mike thought a long time. A minimum of 500 years? More likely 5,000 before anything would be done.
That's a long time for a jury to be out.
Jubal, the greatest difference between the two races is that Martians never hurry, and humans always do. They would much rather think about it an extra century or half dozen to be sure that they grok all the fullness.
In that case, son, don't worry about it. If in another 500 or 1,000 years the human race can't handle its neighbors, you and I can't help it. However, I suspect that they will be able to.
So I grok, but not in fullness. I said I wasn't worried about that. The other possibility troubled me more, that they might move in and try to make us over. Jubal, they can't. An attempt to make us behave like Martians would kill us, as certainly, but not painlessly. It would be a great wrongness. Jubal took time to answer.
But, son, isn't that what you have been trying to do?
Mike looked unhappy. It was what I started out to do. It is not what I'm trying to do now. Father, I know that you were disappointed in me when I started this.
Your business, son.
Yes, self. I must grok each cusp myself alone. And so must you. And so must each self. Thou art God.
I don't accept the nomination.
You can't refuse it. Thou art God, and I am God, and all that groks is God. And I am all that I have ever been or seen or felt or experienced. I am all that I grok. Father, I saw the horrible shape this planet is in, and I groked, though not in fullness, that I could change it. What I had to teach couldn't be taught in schools. I was forced to smuggle it in as a religion, which it is not, and con the Marks into tasting it by appealing to their curiosity. In part, it worked as I knew it would. The discipline was just as available to others as it was to me, who was raised in a Martian nest. Our brothers get along together. You've seen, you've shared. Live in peace and happiness, with no bitterness, no jealousy. That alone was a triumph. Male-femaleness is the greatest gift we have. Romantic physical love may be unique to this planet. If it is, the universe is a poorer place than it could be. And I grok dimly that we who are God will save this precious invention and spread it. The joining of bodies with merging of souls in shared ecstasy, giving, receiving, delighting in each other. Well, there's nothing on Mars to touch it. And it's the source, I grok, in fullness, of all that makes this planet so rich and wonderful. And Jubal, until a person, man or woman, has enjoyed this treasure, bathed in the mutual bliss of minds linked as closely as bodies, that person is still as virginal and alone as if he had never copulated. But I grok that you have. Your very reluctance to risk a lesser thing proves it. And anyhow, I know it directly. You grok. You always have, without needing the language of grokking. Dawn told us that you were as deep into her mind as you were into her body.
The lady exaggerates.
It is impossible for Dawn to speak other than rightly about this. And, forgive me, we were there. In her mind, but not in yours. And you were there with us, sharing. Jubal refrained from saying that the only times he had ever felt that he could read minds was precisely in that situation, and then not thoughts, but emotions. He simply regretted without bitterness that he was not half a century younger, in which case Dawn would have had that Miss taken off her name, and he would have boldly risked another marriage, despite his scars. Also that he would not trade the preceding night for all the years that might be left him. In essence, Mike was right.
Go on, sir.
That's what sexual union should be. But that's what I slowly groked it rarely was. Instead, it was indifference and acts mechanically performed, and rape and seduction as a game no better than roulette, but less honest, and prostitution and celibacy by choice, and by no choice, and fear and guilt and hatred and violence, and children brought up to think that sex was bad and shameful and animal and something to be hidden and always distrusted. This lovely, perfect thing, male-femaleness, turned upside down and inside out and made horrible. And every one of those wrong things is a corollary of jealousy. Jubal, I couldn't believe it. I still don't grok jealousy in fullness. It seems insanity to me. When I first learned what this ecstasy was, my first thought was that I wanted to share it. Share it at once with all my water brothers, directly with those female, indirectly by inviting more sharing with those male.
The notion of trying to keep this never-failing fountain to myself would have horrified me had I thought of it. But I was incapable of thinking it. And in perfect corollary, I had no slightest wish to attempt this miracle with anyone I did not already cherish and trust. Jubal, I am made physically unable even to attempt love with a female who has not shared water with me. And this runs all through the nest. Psychic impotence, unless spirits blend as flesh blends. Jubal was thinking mournfully that it was a fine system for angels when a sky car landed on the private flat diagonally in front of him. He turned his head to see, and as its skids touched, it vanished. "Trouble?" he asked. "No," Mike denied. "They are beginning to suspect that we are here. That I am, rather. They think the rest are dead. The innermost temple, I mean. The other circles aren't being bothered." He grinned. "We could get a good price for these rooms. The city is filling up with Bishop Short's shock troops." "Isn't it about time to get the family elsewhere?" "Jubal, don't worry. That car never had a chance to report, even by radio. I'm guarding us. It's no trouble now that Jill is over her misconceptions about wrongness in discorporating persons who have wrongness in them. I used to have to use complicated expedients to protect us, but now Jill knows that I do it only as fullness is grokked." The man from Mars grinned boyishly. "Last night she helped me with a hatchet job. Nor was it her first time." "What sort of a job?" "Oh, just to follow up on the jailbreak. Some few I couldn't release. They were vicious. So I got rid of them before I got rid of bars and doors. But I've been slowly grokking this whole city for months, and quite a few of the worst were not in jail. I have been waiting, making a list, making sure of fullness in each case. So now that we are leaving this city, they don't live here anymore. They were discorporated and sent back to the foot of the line to try again. Incidentally, that was the grokking that changed Jill's attitude from squeamishness to hearty approval, when she finally grokked in fullness that it is impossible to kill a man, that all we were doing was much like a referee removing a player for unnecessary roughness. "Aren't you afraid of playing God, lad?" Mike grinned with unashamed cheerfulness. "I am God. Thou art God. And any jerk I remove is God, too. Jubal, it is said that God notes each sparrow that falls, and so he does. But the closest it can be said in English is that God cannot avoid noting the sparrow because the sparrow is God. And when a cat stalks a sparrow, both of them are God, carrying out God's thoughts." Another sky car started to land and vanished. Jubal did not comment. "How many did you toss out of the game last night?" "Oh, about 450. I didn't count. This is a largish city, but for a while it is going to be an unusually decent one. No cure, of course. There is no cure, short of the discipline." Mike looked unhappy. "And that is what I must ask you about, Father. I'm afraid I have misled our brothers." "How, Mike?" "They're too optimistic. They see how well it works for us. They know how happy they are, how strong and healthy and aware, how deeply they love each other. And now they think they grok that it is just a matter of time until the whole human race will reach the same beatitude. Oh, not tomorrow. Some of them grok that 2,000 years is but a moment for such a mission. But eventually. And I thought so, Jubal, at first. I led them to think so. But, Jubal, I had missed a key point. Humans are not Martians. I made this mistake again and again, corrected myself, and still made it. What works for Martians does not necessarily work for humans. Oh, the conceptual logic, which can be stated only in Martian, does work for both races. The logic is invariant. But the data are different, so the results are different. I couldn't see why. When people were hungry, some of them didn't volunteer to be butchered so that the rest could eat. On Mars, this is obvious, and an honor. I couldn't understand why babies were so prized. On Mars, our 2 little girls in there would be dumped outdoors to live or die, and 9 out of 10 nymphs die their first season. My logic was right, but I misread the data. Here, babies do not compete, but adults do. On Mars, adults never compete. They've been weeded out as babies, but one way or another, competing and weeding takes place, or a race goes downhill. But whether or not I was wrong in trying to take the competition out at both ends, I have lately begun to grok that the human race won't let me, no matter what. Duke stuck his head into the room. "Mike, have you been watching outside? There's a crowd gathering around the hotel." "I know," agreed Mike. "Tell the others that waiting is not filled." He went on to Jubal. "Thou art God." It's not a message of cheer and hope, Jubal. It's a defiance and an unafraid, unabashed assumption of personal responsibility. He looked sad, but I rarely put it over. A very few, just these few here with us, our brothers, understood me and accepted the bitter along with the sweet, stood up and drank it, grokked it. The others, hundreds and thousands of others, either insisted on treating it as a prize without a contest, a conversion, or ignored it. No matter what I said, they insisted on thinking of God as something outside themselves, something that yearns to take every indolent moron to his breast and comfort him. The notion that the effort has to be their own, and that the trouble they are in is all their own doing, is one that they can't or won't entertain. The man from Mars shook his head. "My failures so greatly outnumber my successes that I wonder if full grokking will show that I'm on the wrong track, that this race must be split up, hating each other, fighting, constantly unhappy, and at war even with their own individual selves, simply to have that weeding out that every race must have." "Tell me, Father. You must tell me."
"Mike, what in hell led you to believe that I was infallible?" Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein, concluded. Cassette 12, Side 1. Tell me, Father. You must tell me. "Mike, what in hell led you to believe that I was infallible?" Perhaps you are not, but every time I've needed to know something, you have always been able to tell me, and fullness always showed that you spoke rightly.
Damn it, I refuse this apotheosis. But I do see one thing, son. You have always urged everyone else never to hurry. Waiting will fill, you say.
That is right.
Now you are violating your own rule. You have waited only a little, a very short time by Martian standards, and you want to throw in the towel. You've proved that your system works for a small group, and I'm glad to confirm it. I've never seen such happy, healthy, cheerful people. That ought to be enough for the short time you've put in. Come back when you have 1,000 times this number, all working and happy and unjealous, and we'll talk it over again. Fair enough?
You speak rightly, Father.
I ain't through. You've been fretting that since you failed to hook 99 out of 100, the race couldn't get along without its present evils. Had to have them for weeding out, but damn it, lad, you've been doing the weeding. Or rather, the failures have been doing it by not listening to you. Had you planned to eliminate money and property?
Oh, no. Inside the nest, we don't need it, but
nor does any healthy family. But outside, you need it in dealing with other people. Sam tells me that our brothers, instead of getting unworldly, are slicker with money than ever. Right?
Oh, yes. Money-making is a simple trick once you grok.
You've just added a new beatitude. Blessed is the rich in spirit, for he shall make dough. How do our people stack up in other fields? Better or worse than average?
Oh, better, of course. You see, Jubal, it's not a faith. The discipline is simply a method of efficient functioning in anything.
You've answered yourself, son. If all you say is true, and I'm not judging, I'm asking, you're answering, then competition, far from being eliminated, is rougher than ever. If 0.1% of the population is capable of getting the news, then all you have to do is show them. And in a matter of some generations, the stupid ones will die out, and those with your discipline will inherit the earth. Whenever that is, in 1,000 years or 10,000, we'll be soon enough to worry about some new hurdle to make them jump higher. But don't get faint-hearted because only a handful have turned into angels overnight. I never expected any to manage it. I thought you were making a damn fool of yourself by pretending to be a preacher.
Mike sighed and smiled. I was beginning to be afraid I was, worrying that I had let my brothers down.
I still wish you had called it cosmic halitosis or some such, but the name doesn't matter. If you've got the truth, you can demonstrate it. Talking doesn't prove it. Show people.
Mike did not answer. His eyelids drooped. He held perfectly still. His face was without expression. Jubal stirred restlessly, afraid that he had said too much, crowded the lad into a need to withdraw. Then Mike's eyes opened. He grinned merrily. "You've got me all squared away, Father. I'm ready to show them now. I grok the fullness." The man from Mars stood up. Waiting is ended. Chapter 37. Jubal and the man from Mars strolled into the room with the big stereo tank. The entire nest was gathered, watching it. It showed a dense and turbulent crowd, somewhat restrained by policemen. Mike glanced at it and looked serenely happy. They come. Now is the fullness. The sense of ecstatic expectancy Jubal had felt growing ever since his arrival swelled greatly, but no one moved. "It's a mite big tip, sweetheart," Jill agreed. "And ready to turn," added Patty. "I'd better dress for it," Mike commented. "Have I got any clothes around this dump, Patty?" "Right away, Michael." Jubal said, "Son, that mob looks ugly to me. Are you sure this is the time to tackle them?" "Oh, sure," said Mike. "They've come to see me, so now I go down to meet them." He paused while some clothing got out of the way of his face. He was being dressed at breakneck speed with the unnecessary help of several women. Each garment seemed to know where to go and how to drape itself. "This job has obligations as well as privileges. The star has to show up for the show. Grok me. The mark's expected." Duke said, "Mike knows what he's doing, boss." "Well, I don't trust mobs." "That crowd is mostly curiosity seekers. They always are. Oh, there are some Fosterites and some others with grudges, but Mike can handle any crowd. You'll see. Right, Mike?" "Correct, cannibal. Pull in a tip, then give 'em a show. Where's my hat? Can't walk in the noonday sun without a hat." An expensive Panama with a sporty colored band glided out and settled itself on his head. He cocked it jauntily. "There. Do I look all right?" He was dressed in his usual outer services mufti, a smartly tailored, sharply creased white business suit, shoes to match, snowy shirt, and a luxurious, dazzling scarf. Ben said, "All you lack is a briefcase. You grok I need one? Patty, do we have one?" Jill stepped up to him. "Ben was kidding, dear. You look just perfect." She straightened his tie and kissed him, and Jubal felt kissed. "Go talk to them." "Yep. Time to turn the tip. Anne, Duke." "Ready, Mike." Anne was wearing her fair witness cloak, wrapping her in dignity. Duke was just the opposite, being sloppily dressed with a lighted cigarette dangling from his face, an old hat on the back of his head with a card marked Press stuck in its band, and himself hung about with cameras and kit. They headed for the door to the foyer common to the 4 penthouse suites. Only Jubal followed. All the others, 30 and more, stayed around the stereo tank. Mike paused at the door. There was a hall table there with a pitcher of water and glasses, a dish of fruit and a fruit knife. "Better not come any farther," he advised Jubal, "or Patty would have to escort you back through her pets." Mike poured himself a glass of water, drank part of it. "Preaching is thirsty work." He handed the glass to Anne, then took the fruit knife and sliced off a chunk of apple. It seemed to Jubal that Mike sliced off one of his fingers. But his attention was distracted as Duke passed the glass to him. Mike's hand was not bleeding, and Jubal had grown somewhat accustomed to legerdemain. He accepted the glass and took a sip, finding that his own throat was very dry. Mike gripped his arm and smiled. "Quit fretting. This will take only a few minutes. See you later, Father." They went out through the guardian cobras, and the door closed. Jubal went back to the room where the others were, still carrying the glass. Someone took it from him he did not notice as he was watching images in the big tank. The mob seemed denser, surging about, and held back by police armed only with nightsticks. There were a few shouts, but mostly just the unlocalized muttering of the crowd. Someone said, "Where are they now, Patty?" "They've dropped down the tube. Michael is a little ahead. Duke stopped to catch Anne. They're entering the lobby. Michael's been spotted. Pictures being taken." The scene in the tank resolved into enormous head and shoulders of a brightly cheerful newscaster. "This is NWNW, New World Network's mobile news hound on the spot. While it's hot, your newscaster, happy holiday. We have just learned that the fake Messiah, sometimes known as the Man from Mars, has crawled out of his hideout in a hotel room here in beautiful St. Petersburg, the city that has everything to make you sing.
Apparently Smith is about to surrender to the authorities. He crashed out of jail yesterday using high explosives smuggled into him by his fanatic followers, but the tight cordon placed around this city seems to have been too much for him. We don't know yet. I repeat, we don't know yet. So stay with the chap who covers the map. And now a word from your local sponsor who has given you this keyhole peep at the latest leap. Thank you, happy holiday, and all you good people watching via NWNW. What price paradise? Amazingly low. Come out and see for yourself at Elysian Fields. Just opened as home sites for a restricted clientele. Land reclaimed from the warm waters of the glorious Gulf, and every lot guaranteed at least 18 inches above mean high water, and only a small down payment on a happy... Uh-oh, later, friends. Phone Gulf 92828. And thank you, Jick Morris and the developers of Elysian Fields. I think we've got something, folks. Yes, sir, I think we do. They're coming out the front entrance, Patty said quietly. The crowd hasn't spotted Michael yet. Maybe not yet, but soon. You are now looking at the main entrance of the magnificent Sans Souci Hotel, gem of the Gulf, whose management is in no way responsible for this hunted fugitive, and who have cooperated with the authorities throughout, according to a statement just issued by Police Chief Davis. And while we're waiting to see what will happen, a few highlights in the strange career of this half-human monster raised on Mars. The live scene was replaced by quick cuts of stock shots. The envoy blasting off years earlier, the champion floating upward silently and effortlessly under Lyle Drive, Martians on Mars, the triumphant return of the champion, a quick of the first faked interview with the man from Mars. What do you think of the girls here on Earth? Gee. A quicker shot of the conference in the Executive Palace, and the much-publicized awarding of a doctorate in philosophy, all with rapid-fire commentary. See anything, Patty? Michael is at the top of the steps. The crowd is at least 100 yards away, being kept off the hotel grounds. Duke has grabbed some pics, and Mike is waiting to let him change lenses. No hurry. Happy Holiday went on as the tank shifted to the crowd, semi-close and panning. You understand, friends, that this wonderful community is in a unique condition today. Something strange has been going on, and these people are in no mood to trifle. Their laws have been flouted, their security forces treated with contempt. They are angry, righteously so. The fanatic followers of this alleged Antichrist have stopped at nothing to create turmoil in a futile effort to let their leader escape the closing net of justice. Anything can happen. Anything. The announcer's voice climbed. Yes, he's coming out now. He's walking toward the people. The scene cut to reverse. Mike was walking directly toward camera. Anne and Duke were behind, and dropping farther behind. This is it. This is it. This is the blow-off. Mike continued to walk unhurriedly toward the crowd until he loomed up in the stereo tank in life-size, as if he were in the room with his water brothers. He stopped on the grass verge in front of the hotel, a few feet from the crowd. You called me? He was answered with a growl. The sky held scattered clouds. At that instant, the sun came out from behind one, and a shaft of light hit him. His clothes vanished. He stood before them, a golden youth, clothed only in beauty. Beauty that made Jubal's heart ache, thinking that Michelangelo in his ancient years would have climbed down from his high scaffolding to record it for generations unborn. Mike said gently, Look at me. I am a son of man. The scene cut for a 10-second plug, a line of can-can dancers singing, Come on, ladies, do your duds in the smoothest, yummiest suds. Lover soap is kind to hands, but be sure you save the bands. The tank filled with foamy suds amid girlish laughter, and the scene cut back to newscast. God damn you! A half brick caught Mike in the ribs. He turned his face toward his assailant. But you yourself are God. You can damn only yourself, and you can never escape yourself. Blasphemer! A rock caught him over his left eye, and blood welled forth. Mike said calmly, In fighting me you fight yourself, for thou art God, and I am God, and all that Groks is God. There is no other. More rocks hit him. He began to bleed in several places. Hear the truth. You need not hate, you need not fight, you need not fear. I offer you the water of life. Suddenly his hand held a tumbler of water, sparkling in sunlight.
and you may share it whenever you so will, and walk in peace and love and happiness together." A rock caught the glass and shattered it. Another struck him in the mouth. Through bruised and bleeding lips he smiled at them, looking straight into the camera with an expression of yearning tenderness on his face. Some trick of sunlight and stereo formed a golden halo back of his head. "Oh, my brothers, I love you so. Drink deep, share and grow closer without end. Thou art God." Jubal whispered it back to him. The scene made a 5-second cut. Cahuenga Cave, the nightclub with real Los Angeles smog imported fresh every day. 6 erotic dancers. "Lynch him, give the bastard a nigger necktie." A heavy-gauge shotgun blasted at close range, and Mike's right arm was struck off at the elbow and fell. It floated gently down, then came to rest on the cool grasses, its hand curved open in invitation. "Give him the other barrel, Shorty, and aim closer." The crowd laughed and applauded. A brick smashed Mike's nose, and more rocks gave him a crown of blood. The truth is simple, but the way of man is hard. First you must learn to control your self. The rest follows. Blessed is he who knows himself and commands himself, for the world is his, and love and happiness and peace walk with him wherever he goes. Another shotgun blast was followed by 2 more shots. One short, a .45 slug, hit Mike over the heart, shattering the 6th rib near the sternum and making a large wound. The buckshot and the other slug sheared through his left tibia 5 inches below the patella and left the fibula sticking out at an angle, broken and white against the yellow and red of the wound. Mike staggered slightly and laughed, went on talking, his words clear and unhurried. "Thou art God. Know that, and the way is opened. God damn it, let's stop this taking of the name of the Lord in vain. Come on, men, let's finish him." The mob surged forward, led by one bold with a club. They were on him with rocks and fists, and then with feet as he went down. He went on talking while they kicked his ribs in and smashed his golden body, broke his bones, and tore an ear loose. At last someone called out, "Back away so we can get the gasoline on him." The mob opened up a little at that warning, and the camera zoomed to pick up his face and shoulders. The man from Mars smiled at his brothers, said once more, softly and clearly, "I love you." An incautious grasshopper came whirring to a landing on the grass a few inches from his face. Mike turned his head, looked at it as it stared back at him. "Thou art God," he said happily, and discorporated. Chapter 38. Flame and billowing smoke came up and filled the tank. "Golly," Patty said reverently, "that's the best blow-off ever used." "Yes," agreed Becky judicially. "The professor himself never dreamed up a better one." Van Tromp said very quietly, apparently to himself, "In style. Smart and with style. The lad finished in style." Jubal looked around at his brothers. Was he the only one who felt anything? Jill and Dawn were seated, each with an arm around the other, but they did that whenever they were together. Neither seemed disturbed. Even Dorcas was dry-eyed and calm. The inferno in the tank cut to smiling Happy Holiday, who said, "And now, folks, a few moments for our friends at Elysian Fields who so graciously gave up their—" Patty cut him off. "Anne and Duke are on their way back up," she said. "I'll let them to the foyer, and then we'll have lunch." She started to leave. Jubal stopped her. "Patty, did you know what Mike was going to do?" She seemed puzzled. "Huh? Why, of course not, Jubal. It was necessary to wait for fullness. None of us knew." She turned and left. "Jubal," Jill was looking at him. "Jubal, our beloved father, please stop and grok the fullness. Mike is not dead. How can he be dead when no one can be killed? Nor can he ever be away from us who have already grokked him. Thou art God." "Thou art God," he repeated dully. "That's better. Come and sit with Dawn and me. In the middle." "No. No, just let me be." He went blindly to his own room, let himself in and bolted the door after him, leaned heavily with both hands, gripping the foot of the bed. My son, oh, my son, would that I had died for thee. He had had so much to live for, and an old fool that he respected too much had to shoot off his yap and goad him into a needless, useless martyrdom. If Mike had given them something big, like stereo or bingo, but he gave them the truth, or a piece of the truth, and who is interested in truth? He laughed through his sobs. After a while he shut them off, both heartbroken sobs and bitter laugh, and pawed through his travel bag. He had what he wanted with him. He had kept a supply in his toilet kit ever since Joe Douglas's stroke had reminded him that all flesh is grass. Now his own stroke had come, and he couldn't take it. He prescribed 3 tablets to make it fast and certain, washed them down with water, and lay quickly on the bed. Shortly, the pain went away. From a great distance, the voice reached him. Jubal. I'm resting. Don't bother me. Jubal. Please, Father. Yes, Mike. What is it? Wake up. Fullness is not yet. Here, let me help you. Jubal sighed. Okay, Mike. He let himself be helped and led into the bath, let his head be held while he threw up, accepted a glass of water and rinsed out his mouth. Okay now? Okay, son. Thanks. Then I've got some things to attend to. I love you, Father. Thou art God. I love you, Mike. Thou art God. Jubal puttered around a while longer, making himself presentable, changing clothes, taking one short brandy to kill the slightly bitter taste still in his stomach, then went out to join the others. Patty was alone in the room with the babble tank, and it was switched off. She looked up. Some lunch now, Jubal? Yes, thanks. She came up to him. That's good. I'm afraid most of them simply ate and scooted, but each of them left a kiss for you. And here it is, all in one package. She managed to deliver in full all the love placed in her proxy, cemented together with her own. Jubal found that it left him feeling strong, with her serene acceptance shared. No bitterness left. Come out into the kitchen, she said. Tony's gone, so most of the rest are there. Not that his growls ever really chased anybody out. She stopped and tried to stare down the back of her neck. Isn't that final scene changing a little? Sort of smoky, maybe? Jubal solemnly agreed that he thought it was. He couldn't see any change, but he was not going to argue with Patty's idiosyncrasy. She nodded. I expected it. I can see around me all right. Except myself, I still need a double mirror to see my back clearly. Mike says my sight will include that presently. No matter. In the kitchen, perhaps a dozen were lounging at a table and elsewhere. Duke was at the range, stirring a small saucepan. Hi, boss. I ordered a 20-place bus. That's the biggest that can land in our little landing flat. And we'll need one almost that big, what with the diaper set and Patty's pets. Okay? Certainly. Are they all coming home? If they ran out of bedrooms, the girls could make up dosses that would do in the living room and here and there. And this crowd would probably double up anyhow. Come to think of it, he might not be allowed to sleep solo himself. He made up his mind not to fight it. It was friendly to have a warm body on the other side of the bed, even if your intentions weren't active. By God, he had forgotten how friendly it was. Growing closer. Not everybody. Tim will pilot us, then turn in the bus and go to Texas for a while. The skipper and Beatrix and Sven, we're going to drop off in New Jersey. Sam looked up from the table. Ruth and I have got to get back to our kids, and Saul is coming with us. Can't you stop by home for a day or two first? Well, maybe. I'll talk it over with Ruth. Boss, put in Duke, how soon can we fill the swimming pool? Well, we never filled it earlier than April before, but with the new heaters, I suppose we could fill it any time. Jubal added, but we'll still have some nasty weather. Snow still on the ground yesterday. Boss, let me clue you. This gang can walk through snow hip-deep on a tall giraffe and not notice it. And will, to swim. Besides that, there are cheaper ways of keeping that water from freezing than with those big oil heaters. Jubal,
Yes, Ruth?
we'll stop for a day, or maybe more. The kids don't miss me, and I'm not aching to take over being motherly without Patty to discipline them anyhow. Jubal, you've never really seen me until you've seen me with my hair floating around me in the water, looking like Mrs. Do-as-you-would-be done by.
It's a date. Say, where's the squarehead and the Dutchman? Beatrix has never been home. They can't be in such a hurry.
I'll tell 'em, boss.
Patty, can your snake stand a clean, warm basement for a while, until we can do better? I don't mean Honey Bun, she's people. But I don't think the Cobra should have the run of the house.
Of course, Jubal.
Jubal looked around. Dawn, can you take shorthand?
She doesn't need it, put in Anne, any more than I do.
I should have known. Use typewriter?
I will learn if you wish it, Dawn answered.
Consider yourself hired, until there's a vacancy for a high priestess somewhere. Jill, have we forgotten anybody?
No, boss. Except that all those who left feel free to camp on you any time, too, and they will.
I assume that. Nest number 2, when and as needed.
He went over to the range, glanced into the pan Duke was stirring. It held a small amount of broth.
Mike?
Yep. Duke dipped out a little in the spoon, tasted it. Needs a little salt?
Yes, Mike always did need a little seasoning.
Jubal took the spoon and tasted the broth. Duke was correct. The flavor was sweet and could have used salt.
But let's grok him as he is. Who's left to share?
Just you. Tony left me here with strict instructions to stir by hand, add water as needed, and wait for you. Not to let it scorch.
Then grab a couple of cups. We'll share it and grok together.
Right, boss. 2 cups came sailing down and rested by the saucepan. This is a joke on Mike. He always swore that he would outlive me and serve me up for Thanksgiving. Or maybe the joke's on me, because we had a bet on it, and now I can't collect.
You won only by default. Split it evenly.
Duke did so. Jubal raised his cup.
Share.
Grow ever closer. Slowly they drank the broth, stretching it out, savoring it, praising and cherishing and grokking their donor. Jubal found, to his surprise, that although he was overflowing with emotion, it was a calm happiness that did not bring tears. What a quaint and gawky puppy his son had been when first he saw him, so eager to please, so naive in his little mistakes. And what a proud power he had become, without ever losing his angelic innocence. I grok you at last, son, and would not change a line. Paddy had his lunch waiting for him. He sat down and dug in, hungry and feeling that it had been days since breakfast. Sam was saying, I was telling Saul that I grok no need to make any change in plans. We go on as before. If you've got the right merchandise, the business grows, even though the founder has passed on. I wasn't disagreeing, Saul objected. You and Ruth will found another temple, and we'll found others, but we'll have to take time now to accumulate capital. This isn't a street corner revival, nor yet something to set up in a vacant shop. It requires staging and equipment. That means money, not to mention such things as paying for a year or 2 on Mars for Stinky and Miriam, and that's just as essential. All right, already, who's arguing? We wait for fullness, and go ahead. Jubal said suddenly,
Money is no problem.
How's that, Jubal?
As a lawyer, I shouldn't tell this, but as a water brother, I do what I grok. Just a moment. Anne?
Yes, boss?
Buy that spot, the one where they stoned Mike. Better get about 100-foot radius around it.
Boss, the spot itself is a public parkway. 100-foot radius will cut off some public road and a piece of the hotel grounds.
Don't argue.
I wasn't arguing. I was giving you facts.
Sorry. They'll sell. They'll reroute that route. Hell, if their arms are twisted properly, they'll donate the land. Twisting done through Joe Douglas, I think. And have Douglas claim from the morgue whatever was left when those ghouls got through with him, and we'll bury him on that spot. Say a year from now, with the whole city mourning and the cops that didn't protect him today standing at attention.
What to put over him? The fallen caryatid? No, Mike had been strong enough for his stone. The Little Mermaid would be better, but it wouldn't be understood. Maybe one of Mike himself, just as he was when he said, Look at me, I am a son of man. If Duke didn't catch a shot of it, New World did. And maybe there was a brother, or would be a brother, with the spark of Rodin in him to do it right and not fancy it up. "We'll bury him there," Jubal went on, "unprotected, and let the worms and the gentle rain grok him. A grok Mike will like that. And I want to talk to Joe Douglas as soon as we get home." "Yes, boss. We grok with you." "Now, about that other." He told them about Mike's will. "So you see, each one of you is at least a millionaire. Just how much more than that I haven't estimated lately. But much more, even after taxes. No strings on it at all. But I grok that you will spend as needed for temples and similar stuff. But there's nothing to stop you from buying yachts if you wish. Oh, yes, Joe Douglas stays on as manager for any who care to let the capital ride. Same pay as before. But I grok Joe won't last long, whereupon management devolves on Ben Caxton." "Ben?" Caxton shrugged. "It can be in my name. I grok I'll hire me a real businessman. Name is Saul." "That wraps it then. Some waiting time, but nobody will dare really fight this will. Mike rigged it, you'll see. How soon can we get out of here? Is the tab settled?" "Jubal," Ben said gently, "we own this hotel." Not long thereafter, they were in the air, with no trouble from police. The town had quieted down as fast as it had flared up. Jubal sat forward with Stinky Mahmood and relaxed. Discovered that he was not tired, not unhappy, not even fretting to get back to his sanctuary. They discussed Mahmood's plan to go to Mars to learn the language more deeply. After, Jubal was pleased to learn, completing the dictionary, which Mahmood estimated at a year for his own part in checking the phonetic spellings. Jubal said grumpily, "I suppose I shall be forced to learn the pesky stuff myself, just to understand the chatter around me." "As you grok, brother." "Well, damn it, I won't put up with assigned lessons and regular school hours. I'll work as suits me, just as I always have." Mahmood was silent a moment. "Jubal, we used classes and schedules at the temple because we were handling groups, but some got special attention." "That's what I'm going to need." "Anne, for example, is much, much farther along than she ever let you know. With her total recall memory, she learned Martian in nothing flat, hooked in rapport with Mike."
"Well, I don't have that sort of memory. And Mike's not available."
"No, but Anne is. And stubborn as you are, nevertheless, Dawn can place you in rapport with Anne, if you'll let her. And you won't need Dawn for the second lesson. Anne will then be able to handle it all. You'll be thinking in Martian inside of days, by the calendar, much longer by subjective time. But who cares?" Mahmood leered at him. "You'll enjoy the warming-up exercises."
Jubal bristled. "You're a low, evil, lecherous Arab. And besides that, you stole one of my best secretaries."
"For which I am forever in your debt. But you haven't lost her entirely. She'll give you lessons, too. She'll insist on it."
"Go away and find another seat. I want to think."
Somewhat later, Jubal shouted,
"Front!"
Dorcas came forward and sat down beside him, steno gear ready. He glanced at her before he started to work.
"Child, you look even happier than usual. Glowing."
Dorcas said dreamily, "I've decided to name him Dennis." Jubal nodded.
"Appropriate. Very appropriate."
Appropriate meaning, even if she were mixed up about the paternity, he thought to himself.
"Do you feel like working?"
"Oh, yes, I feel grand."
"Begin. Stereo play, rough draft, working title, A Martian Named Smith. Open up, zoom in on Mars using stock of bones-tailed shots, unbroken sequence, then dissolving to miniature matched set of actual landing place of Envoy. Spaceship in middle distance. Animated Martians, typical, with stock as available or rephotographed. Cut to close. Interior spaceship. Female patient stretched on." Chapter 39. The last chapter. The verdict to be passed on the third planet around Sol was never in doubt. The old ones of the fourth planet were not omniscient, and in their way were as provincial as humans. Grokking by their own local values, even with the aid of vastly superior logic, they were certain in time to perceive an incurable wrongness in the busy, restless, quarrelsome beings of the third planet, a wrongness which would require weeding once it had been grokked and cherished and hated.
But by the time they would slowly get around to it, it would be highly improbable, approaching impossible, that the old ones would be able to destroy this weirdly complex race. The hazard was so slight that those concerned with the third planet did not waste a split eon on it. Certainly Foster did not. "Digby!" His assistant looked up. "Yes, Foster?" "I'll be gone a few eons on a special assignment. Want you to meet your new supervisor." Foster turned and said, "Mike, this is Archangel Digby, your assistant. He knows where everything is around the studio, and you'll find him a very steady straw boss for anything you conceive." "Oh, we'll get along," Archangel Michael assured him, and said to Digby, "Haven't we met before?" Digby answered, "Not that I remember. Of course, out of so many when-wheres." He shrugged. "No matter. Thou art God." "Thou art God," Digby responded. Foster said, "Skip the formalities, please. I've left you a load of work, and you don't have all eternity to fiddle with it. Certainly thou art God, but who isn't?" He left, and Mike pushed back his halo and got to work. He could see a lot of changes he wanted to make.